I taught the design workshops for Emerge SFU last year, and it was a lot of fun. Right now, I'm working at Duolingo as a product designer.
And together, we've also been running a digital design studio called Novel. And we've been doing websites, branding, mobile apps, logos, and visual identity for a variety of clients. So that's been a really cool experience. So for the agenda for today, I'm going to quickly talk about what prototyping is. I'm going to give you guys a quick intro to Figma, show you how to find community UI kits. So these are kits with pre-made screens that we can throw together instead of having to create everything ourselves. And then I'm going to show you how to prototype some of these screens so they look like actual working interfaces. And then we'll leave some time at the end for questions and comments. So what is prototyping? In design, a prototype is a draft version of a product that allows you to explore your ideas and show the intention behind a feature or the overall design concept to users and others. In Figma specifically, we make prototypes by creating interactions and transitions between screens that provide a functional preview of the finished product or interface. So for those of you that haven't used Figma before, it's a really powerful web-based vector editor. So similar to Adobe Illustrator, except everything's online. And you can design and prototype screens. Now, its main important feature is that you can do real-time collaboration with others. So Charlotte and I can actually work on the same project at the same time next to each other, and we can see what each other does. So it's really cool. And if you don't have a Figma account already, I highly recommend you go and sign up. Just go to figma.com, create one. It's free. You won't regret it. It's awesome.
And just to add in, if you guys use your school emails, I think you get the pro version for free.
So I'm just curious, how many of you guys have actually used Figma before? You can type it on the chat. Or what's your familiarity with Figma?
Cool. It looks like we have like beginners and like some people who have used it a few times before. I think Jason will just be going through the basics and then showing you guys a bunch of shortcuts, and I'll be moderating the questions that come through the chat. So feel free to ask anything.
Awesome. So when you first go into Figma, this is what you're going to see. And this is where all the magic happens. So at the top here, we have a toolbar. And this is all the different things we can do. So this thing right here is a frame. And the frame is basically the artboard or the canvas that we're going to be designing all the screens in. So if you look at the right-hand side here, you're going to see a bunch of different presets. So we can put in screens for iPhones, Android, tablet, desktop, etc. So if, let's say I click on iPhone here, it's going to add an iPhone 11 Pro screen. And then we can just start designing in here. Over here, we have all the different things you can add. We've got rectangles, lines, arrows, circles, etc. Go ahead and add a rectangle. We can drag it into the artboard. And you can see here now, it's going to be linked to this iPhone screen. If you move it around, you see that it disappears behind the screen. So nothing will show over top. Now, let's say, for example, we want this to show over top the screen. We can actually click on the frame itself, uncheck this button, which is clip content. And now it's going to be visible. But generally, we don't want that because we don't want things to overflow. So let's just keep this checked for now. Now, with this shape, we can obviously make a bunch of different changes to it. We can change the size. We can go in and we can actually rotate it as well. If we zoom in closer, we'll see there's little circles here. If we pull on them, we can change the radius. So this is really helpful if you want to make buttons. Round buttons, because everyone likes round buttons, like so. We can also duplicate these by hitting Control D or Command D on a Mac. to create different copies of it. And then over here on the right-hand side, we have the properties panel. So main things we can do is we can change the color. We can add a stroke. And then we can also add drop shadows. So Figma is great if you want to organize things, because what we can do, I'm just going to reset this back and then change these colors here so it's easier to see. What we can do is we can get it to automatically organize these things. So if you want them to be equally spaced, we can go to the more options button here, and then we'll distribute vertical spacing. So now we can see that they're evenly spaced. And when you hover over them, there's going to be a bunch of pink handles that appear. So these ones here allow you to adjust the spacing between them. And then these pink circles allow you to rearrange them. So if we have like something in an interface, such as a bunch of grids that we want to change the locations of the objects, we can quickly rearrange it. So that's a really neat feature. We can also align them to the center, like that, and also vertically align it, so it's in the center of the screen. Over here, we have the different layers. We can rearrange the layers to see which one's on top, and we can also rename them by double-clicking on the name. So that's a very quick overview on how to use Figma. Because the hackathon is pretty short and we're working with a time crunch, we don't want to have to create all the components of the screen ourselves. So luckily, what Figma has is a bunch of pre-made UI kits that we can use to quickly mock up a bunch of our screens. So we can find it in Figma community. If I just Google Figma community, and type in UI kit, we're going to see a bunch pop up, different ones. There's iPhone, Android, some custom ones. And we can actually save it to our account by hitting duplicate, which will create a copy. And I think Charlotte will actually just link it to you guys in the chat to make it easier to find. And Charlotte, you're also going to link them the resources as well, right?
Yeah, I'll link everything in the chat.
Awesome. Yeah, so we have a page that's full of really great resources for Figma. And you guys can have a read through it if you have time. Great, so let's say I've duplicated this to my account and I've opened it. This is what it looks like. Not this here. So we have all the different screens that we can potentially use to throw together some mockups. You've got sign-in screens, screens with feeds, content, a marketplace, pop-up, a calendar, even one for banking, an image gallery, messages. There's a lot to choose from. So I wanted to quickly talk about how prototyping works in Figma. So how it works is Figma will link one screen to another screen and then play a transition between the two. So here I have screen A and screen B, and I want to link these two together. So we're going to hit prototype here in the right-hand bar, and then click on our first screen. You'll see that there's going to be a little plus icon that pops up here. We'll click on it and then drag it to B to create the connection. You see a little window pop up here with a bunch of different things we can change. So the first one up here is the interaction. Essentially, what's going to trigger us moving from screen A to screen B. And you see we have a bunch of different things to choose from. On tap is if you tap anywhere on the screen. On drag is if you drag the cursor. So this is really good for imitating the transition between two different screens. Like if you're swiping or hovering, or pressing. And then these ones, if your mouse enters or leave the hotspot, touch down is when you click down on the mouse, and then touch up is when you release your mouse. Another option, instead of linking the entire screen, is let's say you want to link a specific button, and you want, let's say if I click on this button, it's going to link us to screen B. So I can actually click on here and create a connection to screen B. This way, if I click anywhere else on the screen, nothing's going to happen. But if I click on the button, we're going to go to screen B. So let's see how that works in practice. I'm going to find a little play button here. I'm going to move it up and just kind of drop it to screen A. This is where our prototype is going to start. Up here, if I click play, I can see a preview of the prototype. So here we have our first screen. I can click around, nothing's going to happen. When I click on the button, we're going to move to the next screen. So the next thing we have is animation. And this is essentially the transition between the two different screens. We have a bunch of different options here. I'm going to quickly show you what each one looks like. Okay, so the first one's pretty self-explanatory. When I trigger the interaction, it's going to move from A to B instantaneously. Second one is a dissolve, and you can actually change how quickly the animation happens. This one is move in, so screen A will stay in place and screen B will just kind of come in like so. We have move out, where screen A moves out to reveal screen B underneath. When we have a push one, screen B will actually push screen A out of the way. And then the last two are slide in. So slide in is when screen A kind of disappears into the background, and then screen B is revealed. And slide out is kind of like the same thing, but the other way around. Like something like that. Now there is one more animation I haven't talked about, and that's Smart Animate. And this is a relatively new feature in Figma, but it's also the most powerful because it pretty much lets you create any type of transition you can think of. So how does Smart Animate work? It basically looks at these 5 properties of the objects in your frame: the scale, so the sizing, the position, the opacity, rotation, and the color. And it's going to just animate the two to create a smooth transition. So here's an example. I have 3 different screens. This is the same object here. So I started off with a rectangle, and I've just changed a few properties. So I've rotated it, made it bigger, changed it to green. And then over here, I changed it to yellow, made it smaller, and then I added a radius to make it round. And when we preview this prototype here, we can see how Figma translates it into an animation. So pretty cool. This will come in handy for sure. Smart Animate is for keying our swiping gestures. So if you want to swipe from one screen to the next, it's really easy. And I'll show you how to do that here. So first, I'm going to preview this prototype to you guys so you know what I'm talking about. Let's say we want to swipe and see what's on the next screen. We're just going to drag our mouse over like that, and then we can swipe back. So let's see how to make this. I'm going to go up to our UI kit, and I'm just going to copy this screen here. So hit Control C or Command C. Now paste 2 copies down here. So this is our first screen and our second screen. you'll see that when I hover over one of these, the one over here is going to be highlighted as well. Well, how Smart Animate works is it looks for layers with the same name in both screens, and then it applies the animation to that. Because we want these two to be different content, they have to have different names. So I'm going to change this one to content blocks 2. Now you see when I hover over, this one's no longer highlighted. So how this will work is we want this one over here to be in this frame, but then we want it to be off to the right and hidden. So I'm going to copy this and paste it in this feed. I'm going to drag it over just to the edge here. And I'm going to use my keyboard, so the right arrow, just to move it all the way off the screen. I'm going to go back to design and then just change the opacity down to 0. I'm going to do the same thing with this screen. So I want this content here to be in the screen but hidden to the left side. And then again, I'm going to change the opacity back down to 0. We'll go into prototyping here. I'm going to click on this list, drag it over, and make sure you drag it over to the entire frame and not a specific element. So make sure the entire frame is selected and release. Interaction details will pop up. I want to say on drag, Smart Animate to the next screen. We'll do the same thing here. So we'll click on our list, create the interaction back to the screen, on drag, Smart Animate. And let's see how it looks. And there we go. And you see, because I made the opacity 0 for the hidden list, it kind of fades in as you bring it into view. So that's a quick preview of what you can do with Smart Animate. Next, we're just going to design a few screens that will be useful for our mockups. The first thing will be a sign-in screen. Keep it pretty simple. I'll give you a preview of how this would look. So we've got our screen. We'll click in the email box to put in our email. We'll click on our password, enter the password. You'll see this button now turns green. We can click log in, and it's going to bring us to our home screen. So let's make this screen from scratch. I'm going to copy a few screens from the UI kit here. So you want the login. And we want the profile screen here. So copy that over. And what we're going to do now is to create a new screen for each step of the animation. So this will be our initial screen. Nothing's going to be on it. Once we tap on the email, we want our email to be visible. So I'm going to go in here, double click on the text, and then now we can edit the text. Enter some random email, and let's change the text color too, so it's more visible. So down here, we have different options to choose from. These are all the preset styles. If you want to add your own color, you can hit this button here, which detaches it. And now we can pretty much choose any color we want. So next, we want the password to appear when we click on the password screen. So go in here, add a password. Again, we'll change that to black. Next thing we want is for our button to have a press state. So I'm going to select the button here. and we'll just change it to a darker green. Okay, now for these first two screens, we want our button to be disabled. So we can select these, and we'll change it to gray. So these are essentially the 5 screens in our mockup. We're gonna get our email, our password, we're gonna click on the button, and then it's gonna bring us to this screen. So now let's link everything together using the prototype feature. We'll go to prototype, select our first screen, and then the first thing we want to fill out is the email, right? So we'll select email, link that to the second screen. We're gonna say on tap, navigate to this screen, and it's gonna be an instant animation. Here we'll select the password, link it to this screen. And again, we'll keep the same settings. This one over here, once everything's filled in, we can click login to bring us to the last screen. So we'll hit login here, connect to the next screen. Now this one's gonna be a bit different because what we want is when we mouse down on this button, it's gonna change color. And then when we release the mouse, it's gonna bring us to our final screen. So I'm gonna change this interaction to touchdown. I'm going to create a new connection here. This one will be touch up. Because we don't want this to be an instantaneous transition, we're going to change this. So we're going to do move out, and then you see we have different directions we can move the screen. I'm going to select move down, and then set the transition time to 500 milliseconds. This allows you to smooth out your transition. You've got a few different options. I usually prefer ease out because it slows the animation down as it finishes. Now we can go ahead and preview what a prototype looks like. Click here, enter our email, enter our password, hit login, and boom, we're brought to our home screen. The next thing I want to show you guys is how to make a toggle. So I have one of the screens that I took from the UI kit, and we have posts and photos. When we click on photos, we want to be able to slide back and forth between the two. Okay, so I'm going to find the screen from our UI kit here. We're going to copy both of these and paste it in. And for this one, we're going to use Smart Animate again. So we're going to copy the content here, and we're going to paste it in the screen. Kind of just move it out of the way like that. Or they're going to copy the list here, paste it into this final screen, and then move it out of the way on the left side. And now we can create an interaction. So I'm going to select this. And when they tap on this bar here, it's going to bring us to this screen. And the settings I want will be to Smart Animate. We can set the delay of 500 milliseconds and keep everything else the same. On this screen, we'll do the same thing. Select our slider, move it back to the original frame, Smart Animate back. Again, this is what it's going to look like. Next thing I want to show you is how to switch between different tabs. So let's say we have 3 different screens here in different tabs, and we want to switch between them. So when I click down here, it's going to bring me to the next tab, the third tab, and go back to the first tab. So again, I'm going to find these screens in my UI kit. Select this one. Get the calendar and the insights. Put them next to each other. Now we can start prototyping it. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the push animation to push the first screen out of the way and then have the second one just transition in. So in prototype mode, we're going to select our second tab here and link it to the second screen. And we're going to be using push. We wanted to push in from the left because this one will be coming in from this side. So this way. We can keep this at, let's say, 300 milliseconds. And we'll do the same thing with the third tab. Link it to our third screen. Keep these all the same. Now I want to quickly show you something of how this would look if we just kept the settings as is. So you see as I move it, if you look at this status bar here, the whole thing moves. And we don't want that. So the way around this is we're going to click on our link. And we're going to select this thing down here. This is Smart Animate Matching Layers. And what that does is Figma will actually look at all the layers in your frames and anything that's matching. So let's say these two, you see how they're both highlighted. It's going to keep it static. So if I play this again, you see the status bar now stays in place. Now what if I try to move to this screen? You see the animation's broken again. What's the reason for this? Well, if we click in here, we'll see that this one's called iOS status bar white, and this one's called black. So because the names are different, Figma no longer recognizes it as the same component. So we're going to have to change that. The easiest way to do that is we can just delete this over here. We'll copy this status bar and paste it in. So now it has the same name. But because we can't see it, we can just go ahead and manually change the color ourselves. So now it's visible, but the names are still the same, so Figma will know to link it together. When I play the prototype again and move to this screen, you can now see up here, it's going to do a little fade transition to black. There's just a few more changes we have to do to this. So over here, we want these tabs to change as we change to the different screens. So I'm going to change the color of this back to gray. And change this to green. I'll do the same thing with the third screen. When we try that again, now we see that It's a more realistic looking animation. To link all these screens together, we're basically going to have to do the same thing with the prototypes. So here, double click on the first screen or the first tab, link to the first screen. We can keep these settings all the same. Do the same for this one. So it's going to look kind of messy here with all the arrows. But when you go back into design, you won't see it, so it won't really get in your way. So now we can kind of switch between all the different screens.
How are you guys doing here? Are we going too fast, too slow? Do you guys want us to pause for questions? Anything
Any
here?
questions so far?
Cool. Jason, do we want to show them some of the prototypes we've made?
Sure, yeah. So we can give you a few examples of what you can do with Figma. Here's some of the projects that we've worked on. So I'll go ahead and share this prototype here. This one is for a car app. So this is a feature of how you can select different vehicles. So we can hit change vehicle here. Choose the car you want. And when you hit select, it's going to play a little animation. Here's another feature from the same app, where you can take a picture of your dashboard and it's going to tell you what problems are wrong with your car. So just let these images load and hit scan here. Bring a little camera, take a picture. It's going to scan your dashboard, see what air lights are on, show you which ones you have to worry about, and then you can click into it. You can also see more information. And the last example we have is an onboarding screen. So it's entire onboarding thing that goes from start to finish, and I'll show you what that looks like.
And this was mostly done using Smart Animate, so it's super powerful.
Mm-hmm. And so all the animations in here were done completely inside Figma. We didn't use any GIFs or any videos. So we're going to begin setup, connect our device to Bluetooth. Once it's all set up, we're going to want to name our pet. So a bit of background information on this. This is an onboarding process for a smart dog collar that keeps track of where your pet is at all times. And this is essentially just a setup process before users go into the app. So we can click here on the camera, select a picture of our little pupper, give it a name, and then we'll save it. It's going to show us some of the features. So this one is, we get live updates of where our pet is. It's going to prompt us to turn on the location. It's going to alert us when a dog strays too far. We can see the favorite places our dog likes to hang out. We can monitor activity levels. There's challenges to compete for the title of top dog. And we have a built-in light, and you can change the color of that. And then once you click finish, it's going to bring you to the home screen. So that was a little fun project that Charlotte and I did for a hackathon. And we just wanted to showcase that to you guys and, you know, show you what you can do with the prototyping feature. Awesome. So back to our prototypes here. The next one I want to show you is how to create something like a marketplace. So here we have our market. We can scroll down, look at hot deals, trending, other deals. And then within each section, we can actually scroll and see a carousel of the different items we have. So let's make this from scratch. We're gonna find these two screens and then paste them in. So we want market here. So when you hover over these things here, you'll see that it's actually outside of the frame. So this one here actually has 4 boxes and it's just hidden. So we can enable the scrolling feature so they can see more items. To do this, both of these items have to be frames. So this one's a frame already because I changed it earlier, but this one right now, when you download the UI kit, it's going to be in a group. So we're going to double click into here and we want to select all of these different content. And we can hit Control G to group it together. So now it's all going to be one group. We can right click and hit frame selection. So that turns it into a frame. I'm going to drag this text out of here for now because we don't want this to be part of the group. If you select your frame and you go into prototype, you see what's called overflow behavior. So this determines what happens when the content is outside of the view of the frame. We have horizontal scrolling, vertical scrolling, or both. So for a main frame, we want the scrolling to be vertical because we want to see the deals down here. So I'm going to change this to vertical scrolling. For these ones here, we want it to scroll horizontally. So I'm going to change this to horizontal scrolling. Now you're going to see here that a little exclamation mark pops up. And it says, for scrolling to work on this frame, the content needs to be bigger than the frame. So the problem with this is we have our frame here. And because this extends outside of the our market frame boundaries, everything's already contained. So we have to resize the frame to match our market frame. So we'll do that here. And do the same thing with this one. Now we can prototype it and see how it looks. So now we have our scrolling, but now you see there's an issue. Our status bar will disappear. Nav bar actually scrolls up too. We don't want that. We want that to stay in place. So let's go back here and see how we can fix it. I can select on my status bar, go back into design, and we'll see a little button that says fix position when scrolling. We're going to enable that, and that just tells Figma to keep this static as the rest of the screen scrolls. We'll do the same thing with a nav bar down here. Let's preview our prototype again. Perfect, everything's in place. You can scroll up and down. We can move this around, we can move this around. Now let's say we want to click into one of the content here. So I'll play this prototype again. We want these to be clickable. So once we decide which hot deals we want, we can click into it. And we're going to see more information. So let's create a prototype for that as well. Bring my content in. And let's start the animation. So we'll select this one over here, drag it over to this frame. What we're going to do is we're going to have it move in from towards the left, ease out 200 milliseconds. We'll keep Smart Animate selected. Let's preview how that looks. So it looks okay. There's a few things that we can fix. You see that the content here, it kind of slides in. We don't want that. We want this to stay static. So we can go in here. And you see these are both named page header. So Figma should know to keep it static. But if we click into it, this text is called market, and this text is called content. So Figma gets confused and it thinks it's two different layers. So it's going to try and smart animate it. We don't want that. We want it to stay fixed. So I'm going to rename this content to market. Now Figma knows that the two layers are the same. And now when I tap in, you see this is just going to fade to content. So we've got about 10 minutes left here. I just wanted to see if you guys had any questions that I could answer before I keep moving on. Anything you guys want to know about Figma? Anything you're curious about?
Are there any interactions that you guys would like to learn that might be helpful for your hackathon project? Cool. Maybe we can just keep moving forward, Jason.
Sure.
Oh, there was one question in the chat. It's
Yeah.
Is it somehow possible to import the design to Android?
Directly into Android?
Like I would imagine like directly into like Android Studio or something, like a development tool.
Okay, yeah, so Figma unfortunately doesn't have any way to natively import these things, but they do have an inspect feature. So let's say I click into one of these screens and I hit inspect. It's going to display the CSS and the properties. So if I click on a specific element within the screen, let's say the search bar, it's going to show you the positioning, the left, right, top. And you can do this with all the different elements. So it makes it easier for you to code things in individually, but yeah, unfortunately, there's no way to just hit export and then bring it on to, a different environment.
Cool.
But Figma is just really good for showcasing how things work before it actually gets coded up.
Right, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a series of questions now, but just the next one is, does the dev team implement the prototype into the actual app? And how do they ensure the placement of the design is exactly the same? Or
I can
Charlotte,
talk.
I'll pass that to you. Yeah.
Sure. So I've done like many hackathons, and yeah, unfortunately, all my devs will just kind of have to work off the Figma designs I give them, and then just kind of like move things and just like check the margins manually. Yeah, it's really unfortunate we can't just import everything, or else that would make our lives so much easier.
for sure.
Mm-hmm. Could you? Yeah. Okay, cool. I hope that answered it. Oh, there's actually, so if you guys don't like coding like me, I've been looking into a lot of no code tools. And then there's this one called Bravo. Just you can just Google that, and apparently you can just import your design straight from Figma into that, and you don't have to code at all. So
And I guess just to verify, could you get the entire CSS and HTML for all this?
no, I believe it's just the CSS.
Okay, cool. Awesome. I think that's all the questions for now.
Okay.
I'll let you continue. Sorry.
Perfect.
Yeah, Jason, do you want to just show them? So in the spec, there's like the CSS tab, and then underneath there's some Android stuff. There's iOS, Android. I don't know if that helps your developers? Maybe not too much, but yeah.
I don't code, so this text means nothing to me.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, so unfortunately there's no way to import straight into. Yeah.
Okay, so there's one more thing I have time to show you guys, and that's the overlay feature. So if you want to make a pop-up, let's say if you tap on something and we have it pop up, we can do that in Figma pretty easily. So I'll give you a quick preview of what it looks like. Let's say we want to filter our results. Hit filter here. To bring this up, select our option, and then we can save it. So just in the interest of time, I'll just run through it with you guys to show you how the interactions work. I have our market screen here, and then I have our overlay. So this is the one that I originally took from the UI kit up there. I just changed it a little bit to make it look more like what I wanted with the different options. I selected a filter, added a connection to the overlay itself. And in the interaction details, I have on tap, open this overlay. And you see we have a few different options here. You can open the overlay from the center, from the left, or from the bottom. You can also add a background behind the overlay. So anything that's behind the overlay will kind of gray out to add some emphasis to the overlay. And if you click anywhere outside the screen, it's going to close the overlay. From here, I just have these different options linked together. And this is just really simple instant animations on tap. And because we have different overlays, instead of saying navigate to, we're going to say swap overlay. So when I hit option 2 here, it's going to swap to the overlay with option 2 selected. And then if I do the same thing with option 3, it's going to switch to this one. So this is a pretty cool feature if you want to add like notifications, anything that pops up. Really useful. And I'm going to skip this one because we don't really have time. Over here, I'm going to show you how to assign images.
Let's use the images of our friends here.
Okay, sure. So let's say I want to put our friends over here in these boxes. So if I just try and copy and paste them, you see it's going to copy the entire thing, and it's not going to work properly. So what we want to do is we want to copy the property of this. This is essentially just a rectangle with an image fill. So to copy the property, we hit Control-Alt-C or Command-Option-C. And then we can go here. An important thing is to make sure that our color is deselected. So we're going to hit Detach Style, and then we're going to paste it. So we're going to press Control-Alt-V or Command-Alt-V. And there we go. Now, if you want to move this around, you can click into the image, change how it's filled. So let's change it to crop. You can move it around, make it bigger. Sorry for putting you on the spot there. And we can pretty much do that with all the different pictures.
Why did you zoom it in so much?
Like that. Now, one thing to note is if I got a picture from Google, so let's go to Google and let's type in like cactus or something. If we copy a picture of this cactus here, it actually lets us paste it directly into the image, like so. But if your image is already in Figma and you try to paste it, it's going to paste that entire image over top as a new layer. So that's when the properties copy and paste comes in. I guess for the last couple of minutes, just show you one more animation I made for fun. This shows you how you can add life to a static screen. So this is just the same screen. This is one that I found up there. And just added some pizzazz to it to make it look more interesting. Show it one more time. So yeah, Figma is really good if you have some screens and you just want to make it more interesting to people when you're presenting it. You can add fun little animations like that. And I just want to use the last 3 minutes to talk about some really useful plugins for Figma. So we can go into Figma community. And Figma has a huge collection of plugins that we can install to the app. So down here, if we click plugins, we can search up things like feather icons. This is one of my favorite. If you click into it and you hit install, you can access it directly from Figma. So to access this plugin, I'm going to right click, go to plugins, and then open up feather icons. And what this is, it's a library of 282 icons that you can freely use. So if I want to use, let's say, settings icon, look for settings, click on that, I can add it in. I can resize it, change the color, change the thickness, and pretty much modify it however I want. So that's really useful when you're trying to make your own mockups and you want to add your own icons in there without having to go to like flaticons.com and finding a bunch of SVGs. Next one is called Autoflow. And what that does is it allows you to put arrows towards your screens. So if you want to do a mockup and we want to show how each screen connects to each other, we can open up Autoflow. We'll select our first screen, hold Shift, select our second screen. It's going to add arrows. This is really useful if we have different button placements that we want to link to other things. So let's say you can hit the search bar here, hold Shift like that. And when you're presenting your projects, people can see that when they tap the search bar, this is the next screen they're going to see. The last one is UI faces. This one is good if you're creating a list of people and you don't want to find different pictures all the time. What I can do is open up UI faces here. Select my sources, hit this. We want a male, let's say he's happy, he's got black hair. Apply the avatar. It's going to take a few seconds to load. And boom, it's going to find some picture of some random dude on the internet. And these are all pretty much open source, so you don't have to worry about copyright infringement. So pretty useful. So we're pretty much at about time. Any last questions for us?
Cool. So yeah, basically go on to Figma community, search up literally anything and you'll see everything, and just take a bunch of shortcuts because we're on a time crunch for this hackathon. What procedure does the dev team follow after the Figma design is finished? So if you're the designer, I'd say just I don't know, just give them the Figma file. That's what I usually do. And then they could go in and then they can kind of check how the spacing is, what the font sizes are. I hope that answers it. Any clue when the recording of this will be uploaded? Josh, Shubham.
Probably, I would say around maybe tomorrow or after the hackathon, possibly.
Cool. And if I guess there's no questions, thank you so much for coming. Hope you guys learned a lot.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
again. Oh, yeah,
Thank you
go
so
ahead.
much, Sharon.
Sure.
That was a really insightful workshop, and
Thank
we
you,
learned a lot.
guys.
So
Thanks for the workshop,
Yeah.
guys.
I'm sure a
Sure,
lot of
for
people
sure.
will use this for
Appreciate
their
it.
projects. So thank you again for helping us at Storm Hacks and hosting this very enlightening workshop.
For sure.
Good luck, everyone.
Did it.
Yeah, good luck, guys.
You guys. Ciao.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.